It's entitled The Mythical Conservative Revolution and Mandate. Thomas Jefferson said, "The care of human life and happiness is the first and only legitimate object of good government." The congressional election of November the 8th, 1994, was touted by conservative Republicans as a rout of liberals and a mandate from the people. It wasn't either. Only 38% of registered voters bothered to vote, and of this 38%, some 53% voted Republican, hardly a mandate. The great silent majority, some 62% of the electorate, those Americans who hate politics, didn't even bother to vote. Rush Limbaugh said at the time, "Screw those who didn't vote." He said this because he understands that a broad voter base means lost elections for conservatives and Republicans who just don't have the numbers. Since 1776, the number of conservatives in our population has been around 1/3. At different times, this number has dwindled until in the 1950s, conservatives were considered an endangered species. To hear Rush Limbaugh tell it, his brand of conservatism came into being in the 1960s as some sort of brand new species with brand new answers and brand new ideologies. Limbaugh rejects popular or dictionary definitions of conservative. To him, to him, all is new. A conservative sees a poor man and he says, "I did it, so I know you can." A liberal sees the same man and says, "You can't do it alone. I'll help you." Are these political definitions? One wonders why people continue to take Rush Limbaugh seriously politically, when he twice failed to vote for his hero, Ronald Reagan. When Reagan ran for president, Limbaugh is an entertainer. He's a political phony. Does the Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, also have feet of clay? Conservatives always harp on the character issue. Wasn't it a character issue when we hear that Gingrich calls Hillary Clinton a bitch? In all the analysis, never once was the character issue touched upon. Why? How were the conservatives, the holier-than-thou moral high roaders, able to duck this one? Conservatives are extremely vulnerable on moral and character issues. What kind of Christian calls the First Lady a bitch? Then we have the goofs of Senator Helms. That Clinton might need a bodyguard if he visited the army down south. And Representative Dick Armey's Barney Fagg Freudian slip. These too were character issues. These were arrogant quips by small-minded men who were feeling the oats of their newfound power. Conservative and liberal are not just political designations. They are characterology. And what about the contract on America? A Newsweek poll of December 27th and 28th, 1994 showed that 47% of Americans never even heard of the contract. Conservative ideology has no magical hold over voters' minds. Conservative repackaged populist rhetoric plays well provincially, but gets diluted in the big towns. The strategy for winning of the conservatives has been to erode public confidence in the corrupt Democrats who controlled Congress. A set of Republican ideas that polls showed would appeal to a majority of the voters was developed. Newt Gingrich's rise to power came by torpedoing Congress and blaming the Democrats. The enemy was the liberal welfare state. It was a battle of ideas. Gingrich said politics is about public opinion and gathering support. John Stuart Mill, in On Liberty, page 75, said, quote, "Public opinion is usually a collective mediocrity," unquote. The Contract on America is a document of pandering which had the effect of nationalizing House elections. In 1984, Newt Gingrich published a book about the decay of the welfare state and the need for traditional values. He and his wife tried to get supporters to buy up the book quickly and artificially boost it onto the bestseller list. What kind of character is displayed here? Now to the Contract on America. The first item was a balanced budget amendment. This is a ruse to destroy the United States government through devolution. The modern conservative seeks a federal governmental structure like the old discredited Articles of Confederation, which had no federal government. Each state was its own government. Modern conservatives say they only wish to limit the welfare state, but the fact is they hate federalism and are out to destroy that part of the government which deals with the general welfare. Number 2 item was to stop violent criminals. Here they want the death penalty. This is ironic. If the government can't handle affirmative action fairly, how can it handle life and death issues? The fact is, political humans can't be trusted with the death penalty. Number 3 was welfare reform. According to conservatives, the government should encourage those on welfare to work. Sounds good. But the facts are that there aren't enough jobs in our economy to accommodate all those who want to work. For nearly 30 years, our economy at full employment has run an unemployment rate of around 5.5%. Also, most people on welfare lack the training for most jobs that appear in want ads. If unskilled poor people are kicked off the welfare rolls, they will have to survive. How? This will mean an increase in crime. What is one to do? Starve instead of stealing one's daily bread? Nature doesn't work that way. But this is what the conservatives leave out of their equations. This is why their mystical ideologies cannot be allowed to govern living reality. The 4th item on the contract with America, which I, throughout this article, call the Contract on America, was protect our kids. And this merely wants to destroy the public school system. Clear and simple. Number 5, tax cuts for families. When an economy has to call for majority tax cuts, it means the private sector has failed to provide adequate wages for workers. Wages are not at proper levels and are not growing. Compassionate and understanding citizens with growing incomes should not fear fair taxation. Everyone but the rich will, at one time or another, benefit from the welfare state. We must not be like some rich traders who renounce their citizenship and go offshore so they don't have to pay taxes. And as we see with the George W. Bush administration, the tax cuts were for anyone but the family. They were for the rich. Number 6, a strong national defense. There's a lot of waste in the defense budget. MC and J.B. Bernstein in Social Security say that when all costs are totaled, defense spending accounts for 50% of the budget. Cutting can start here. It is not true that cuts will jeopardize our ability to conduct war. The fact of the matter is, the Pentagon has lost and cannot account for trillions and trillions of dollars. Number 7, raise senior citizens' earnings limits. Well, this sounded like a good one. Why was this one not put forth by the Democrats? This is the only part of the contract that has validity. But guess what? It didn't happen. And number 8, roll back regulations. Oh, the corporations love this one. Here we go again. This is the kind of talk that brought on the savings and loan disaster on Ronald Reagan's watch. The taxpayers were left with a bill for $500 billion for the bailout, and not one of the big boys caught with their hands in the cookie jar has paid restitution or done time. Enough already. Most regulations are there for a good reason. In the early 1980s, B.D. had his own small business, and he worked hard to elect Ronald Reagan and get the government off the backs of the little guy. Because of Reagan's policies, this man's business failed. Let's not fall for this garbage again. History shows us that the little guy needs protection from business, not from government. All business managers do not have halos, as we have found out with Enron and WorldCom and all the others. And number 9 on the contract was legal reform. This is purely to protect business from the little guy. If he gets hurt, he won't be able to sue for the big bucks. If any reform is needed, it is to make it easier for the little guy to take on big business. But we see that did not happen with the class action reform bill. The big companies have gotten it their way. And number 10, congressional term limits. That one never saw the light of day again. We all know that Republicans pulled carry and did not carry out this one. The contract was a sham, and it was all moving too fast. F.A. Hayek, a darling of the conservatives, said in The Road to Serfdom that it is the demand for quick and determined government action that leads to the creation of a totalitarian regime. Action for action's sake is the goal. To get things done. Someone strong to get things done. This describes Newt Gingrich and his 100-day goal for the conservatives. But democracy doesn't work that way. Conservatives say that the United States is broke and has no money. And they're still saying that. Why, George W. Bush says that the Social Security Treasury bonds are worthless IOUs. And the United States is so broke that it has no money for new programs. And that the present programs must be cut. They pretend objectivity and say this from an economic point of view. We hear that the budget deficit is too high, and we pay too much interest on the debt. We must have tax cuts for the rich, so they will invest and create new jobs. Yet 90% of the 30 million businesses in America are small businesses. Small tax cuts can't help these people. Conservative economics leaves relativity out of the picture. Only banks and those with large disposable incomes have investment capital. Investment is all a matter of disposable income, risk capital. Without disposable income, one lives from paycheck to paycheck. If none of our poverty programs has worked, this is the reason why. Getting out of poverty or any financially social upward mobility program requires the creation of disposable income. Also, big business doesn't invest in small business. It swallows them up. Throughout history, the rich have always disdained work. Only the lower classes worked. The concept of the idle rich has always been taken for granted, not for the poor. Supply-side propaganda has tried to convince us that the rich work hard for their money. They earn their money and should be able to keep it. All of it. These Christian supply-siders obviously don't read their Bibles, or they would know that God gives wealth, and with this wealth comes responsibilities to the poor. Just look at Proverbs 22, verse 16. When conservatives call for non-governmental intervention into the economy, they are thinking mystically. They believe in an invisible hand which guides the markets. To them, this invisible hand is the hand of God. This is their hidden agenda. F.A. Hayek, in The Road to Serfdom, said, quote, those immediately interested in a particular issue are not necessarily the best judges of the interest of a society as a whole, unquote. Hayek also warns that it is easier for people to agree on a negative program than on a positive task. One wonders why conservatives trot out people like Hayek to legitimize their goals. When one researches conservative literature, one finds mystically loyal bias, or that the person is quoted only selectively. Hayek reminds us that a foundation of morals is a respect for the truth, something the conservative today know nothing about. The conservatives in Congress and their ass-kissing think tanks are playing fast and loose with the truth. It should be clear by now that the conservatives in Congress are not trying to cut waste and fraud. If they were, they would have begun with consultants who cost the taxpayer $20 billion every year. They would have looked at overhead, which costs $270 billion a year. The conservatives in Congress are taking us down the wrong economic road. Proof is the George W. Bush administration. The tenet that government intervention in the economy is bad is wrong. From 1870 to 1940, the United States economy was on a roller coaster, boom and bust. After 1940, business cycles have been less severe and without depressions. Conservatives are too ideologic where the economy is concerned. Supply-siders put the cart before the horse. Say's law tells us that supply creates its own demand. This is nonsense. In the Great Depression, we had overproduction, that is, supply. But since people had no jobs, no money, there was little demand. Supply can rot in warehouses without the masses having purchasing power. Supply-siders destroy an economy by dangerously redistributing money to the rich where it becomes concentrated. This contracts the economy and steals purchasing power from the masses. Economics is simple when devoid of politics. Supply-siders have tried to create for themselves a workable, godly materialism. They know that selfish materialism is a crime against God. They don't like to admit that God gave you your wealth. Don't exalt yourself. Deuteronomy 8, verses 11 through 20. Rush Limbaugh and other conservatives like him are always saying that their money belongs to them and they worked hard for it. They earned it. They make fun of compassion. They put out of their minds Proverbs 19, verse 17, that whoever is kind to the poor lends to the Lord. And Luke 9, verse 48, being first, they will become last. Jesus always portrayed the rich in a negative light, and the modern conservative has difficulty with wealth and his Christianity. The conservative will not admit that public investment yields larger income gains than a tax cut. The voters in November were sold a lie, and that was November of 1994. The contract with America is not a revolutionary document. It is discredited, repackaged conservative ideology. Federalism came into being because the 13 original states lacked the ability to raise money for defense and to govern for the benefit of them all. Devolution is a return to these days of inadequacy and incompetence. It is ironic that the foes of federalism use the Federalist Papers to make their arguments. The Federalist Papers argued for a strong federal government. Newt Gingrich's devolution, and Reagan's also, is a clumsy backdoor to states' rights. This newly elected Congress, 1994, elected conservatives into Congress who are not working to clean up government. They have a hidden agenda to destroy the government. Remember who these people are. They are those who would censor movies, textbooks, literature. They are right-wing religious nuts, counterfeit Christians. They are traitors. Rooting out waste and fraud is a good thing, but devolution would destroy all but the war-making arm of our government. There was no revolution, and there was no mandate in the November election of 1994. There was only cunning and guile. And now, a destructive horde of naive politicos has been unleashed upon the United States government. And I'd like to add this. Who are these freshman congressmen? Christian broadcaster Pat Robertson stated that only Christians and Jews are fit to hold public office. Republican presidential candidate Pat Buchanan insisted in 1992 that we are engaged in a religious war for the soul of America. Newt Gingrich said the Supreme Court's school prayer decisions were bad law, bad history, and bad culture. It was just wrong. And if the court doesn't want to reverse itself, then we have an absolute obligation to pass a constitutional amendment to instruct the court on its error. Jerry Falwell stated, our goal has been achieved. The religious right is solidly in place, and religious conservatives in America are now in for the duration. These are the mentors of our freshman congressmen. Is it any wonder that the bills coming out of the House are so goofy and destructive? The end.
Hi, this is William Morrow. Are you one of those people who join a health club, and after they have your big, overpriced annual membership, you notice that you're on your own with little or no results even after all the promises? Then the website Personal Trainer is for you.
Thank you very much, William H. Morrow III.
So you lost another argument with a conservative, right-wing Republican. He talked over you. He screamed and yelled. He brought out the Bible. He thumped it. He quoted scripture to you. You were lost because you came at him with facts. Nothing but facts. And you expected that would make you look good. That would make you win the argument, but it didn't. You know why you lost the argument? You know why you're going to lose your next argument? Because you don't read Censored. Censored, the 30-year-old newsletter that shows you how to defeat a conservative. Read Censored, and you'll have all the ammunition you need. Every time you get into an argument with a right-wing conservative, so-called Christian. Censored. That's all you need. Read it and defeat a conservative.
Greetings, listeners. Let me speak to you for a moment about the foundation of our entire organization, Newsletters Censored. It was founded by our mentor, the Reverend Dr. William J. Eisenman, in 1977. It discusses the 5 taboos of American life: politics, religion, health, human sexuality, and child rearing. You won't find anything like this in the mainstream media and the press. It reveals the kind of truth that most people are afraid to hear. Can you handle it? We are living in the end times, so in order to defeat a conservative and save America, you need Newsletters Censored. Go to www.newslettercensored.com, click on the printable order form page, and with your gift to support this work, get your free annual subscription. This is James P. Madonna of Megalife 21, the hardest hitting internet talk radio station on the planet.